Use the power of discovering new habits to create success in all areas of life. Body, fitness and nutrition, being, spirituality, passion and purpose, balance, marriage, kids and relationships, business, marketing, sales, leadership and systems. Transform your life by learning how habits work. And now your host, husband, father, entrepreneur, trainer, coach, and warrior, Jesse Mule.
Welcome back to the Habit-Based Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Ewell, and today we're going to be talking about the habit of discomfort. This week, of all weeks, I feel like everything I'm talking about is like marriage, spouse. So let's just call this marriage week, spouse week, whatever this is. But one of the things that often comes up in conversations I have with married couples, men, women, is having uncomfortable conversations. Having uncomfortable conversations around topics like sex, intimacy, money, parenting, kids, even talking about in-laws. But for some reason, it seems like every time there's a conversation around this, it's almost like stepping in muddy water. It feels a lot like both sides are holding back, or maybe one side's holding back. And let's be real, some of these topics, are not easy topics to talk about, including, for myself. There's a reason why these topics are uncomfortable. There's a feeling often attached to them. There's stories often attached to them. There's emotions often attached to them. And there becomes energy around them. And the energy around the story, the energy around the feeling is what tends to drive us to this discomfort. And when the energy gets stirred up, it begins to get uncomfortable. And after talking to a few couples last week where they talked about how they feel uncomfortable having a conversation because of a story, because of something happened in the past, because of the emotions or feelings that come up, or maybe even, sometimes your relationship's in a really good place. And so rather than mess that up or confront that, we decide that we're going to hold back. We decide we're going to hold back and not actually say how we feel because things have been going pretty good. And so it's like, well, I don't want to ruin that, so I'm just not going to say something. But think about this. Is the reason why you're holding back or afraid to have this uncomfortable conversation, is it because of facts or is it because of feelings? And I would say more times than not, it's because of the feeling that comes up. It's because of the emotion that comes up in our body that we begin to feel the minute we want to have this uncomfortable conversation. Is it real or is it false? Is this, thing I want to talk about, is it really real? Is it really what's going on, or is it false? Is it just a feeling that's come up for me that I really need to really look at? Because most of us have these feelings based off of previous conversations, previous reactions, previous things that maybe our spouse has done or ways that we've reacted. But I think a lot of times what happens is we have this internal conversation. And what I mean by internal conversation, it's like I have this conversation with my wife about how the conversation is going to actually go. And so inside of that conversation, I'm not actually talking to her, but I'm having this conversation internally with myself, and I'm talking about how she's going to react. I'm talking about how she's going to feel. And inside of that, I begin to get steered in this direction where I don't actually end up having the conversation because of the feelings that come up when I think I'm going to have that. And so what I've experienced in my own in my own marriage is it will never be comfortable to have an uncomfortable conversation. Like, think about this. It will never be comfortable to have an uncomfortable conversation in marriage. And this is why most couples will fail. This is why most businesses fail. You see, your relationship, your marriage is not that much different. The relationship you have in your marriage is not that much different than the relationship you have in your business. And if you struggle having or being uncomfortable in your marriage, talking about stuff in your marriage, this will be no different when it comes to business. You may think it's supposed to get easier, but it produces a lot of times the same feelings. But here's what I'm saying is, like, every time you feel this uncomfortableness, this discomfort, instead of resisting it, like, step into that and be like, man, this is really important. It's uncomfortable. And so usually when something is uncomfortable, it's because it's important, and it may be like a first time, or it may just be an uncomfortable conversation around the issue, the topic, and it may not have went that great the time before. But what I could say is there's a reason why it's uncomfortable, and it's because this conversation really matters. See, I think people at some point think it's actually supposed to get easier, and so they never actually have the conversation and can't figure out why it doesn't get easier. They spend all their time having this internal conversation, how it's going to go, how it's going to end up, and that gets them to the place where they're scared and they don't have it, and then all of a sudden they think, well, I've kind of had it in my mind and how it's going to go, so I'm not going to do this. But listen, in any confrontation, in any collision in a relationship, bringing up something that isn't working, bringing up something that isn't comfortable may hurt the other person. It may hurt their feelings. And it's not easy because there's two people involved. And we don't want to ruffle any feathers, especially if things are good. We don't want to piss each other off, especially if, maybe in a relationship, hey, we're having sex consistently. Why would I want to piss my wife off if it may not happen because of it? But also think of it this way. In business, a lot of times we hold back from these conversations because it may mean my employee might want to leave. It may mean my employee won't work as hard. It may mean I have to step up and actually take on more of the load. And this also can be a reason why in marriage, why we avoid this. But here's the thing. It's not okay to have a sexless marriage. It's not okay to sedate, to not let each other in emotionally and know how we feel. Because if you're not having sex in your marriage, the reason you're not having sex is because you're not communicating and on the same page. You're not having uncomfortable conversations. If you're sedating inside of your marriage, it's because you're not willing to have that uncomfortable conversation. If you're not making the money in your business you want to make, it's because you're not willing to have that uncomfortable conversation with employees. You're not willing to have uncomfortable conversations with clients, and you're not willing to have an uncomfortable conversation with yourself. But whatever this is, here's what I want to ask you. Where in your life have you or are you holding back from uncomfortable conversations? Maybe it's in your business. Maybe it's in your marriage and specific topics like your kids. Maybe it's around sex. Maybe it's around money. Maybe it's around friends. Like, whatever it is, identify where that is and then go into that conversation and have no expectations. So if you're one of those people that has internal conversations about how it's going to go, like, stop it. Just realize that on the other side of that uncomfortable conversation is an opportunity for you to grow. It's an opportunity for you to change the trajectory of where you're at and where you're going. And who can you have the one conversation with today that's uncomfortable? Who's the one person today that you're going to have a conversation with that's uncomfortable? Maybe it's your spouse. Maybe it's an employee. Maybe it's one of your kids. Maybe it's with yourself. But whoever it is, begin to open up and uncover that conversation. I want to thank you guys for being on here today. Let me know if you get some value from this. If you're looking to connect further with a group of like-minded people, join myself and so many others in the Habit-Based Lifestyle Secrets group, where I'll be dropping daily habits to help you live to your full potential. If you want to be one of our next case studies and begin living this habit-based lifestyle, maybe you have questions, comments, concerns, feel free to contact me, Jesse at habitbasedlifestyle.com. Until next episode, have a great day.